The painting you're looking at right now was created sometime between 1819 and 1823, and its title is Saturn Devouring His Son. In it, we see a giant figure emerging from complete darkness. His body is naked, pale in patches, tense across the shoulders and arms in a way that suggests not strength but desperation. He is not standing in triumph. He is crouching, hunched forward, as if caught in the middle of something he cannot stop and does not fully understand. His hands are wrapped around a smaller body. The fingers press into the flesh with a grip that is almost maternal in its tightness, possessive, terrified, absolute. The body he holds is limp, already half gone, the head already taken, and then there is the face. Saturn is not looking at what he holds. He is not lost in the act. His eyes are open wide, not with hunger, not with rage, but with something much harder to name. There is panic in them. There is the specific terror of a creature who knows on some level what it has become and still cannot make itself stop. That is the first thing this painting does to you. Before you have time to think about mythology or history or art, it makes you feel something very specific. Not disgust, not shock, something quieter and worse than both. It makes you feel recognition. Francisco Goya spent most of his life painting the surfaces of power. He was a court painter, close to kings, skilled at rendering silk and gold braid and the dignified expressions of people who believed history would remember them kindly. He was successful, he was celebrated, he understood how to show the world to itself in the way it wished to be seen, and then the world showed him something else entirely. Spain fractured. War came, not the clean, glorious kind that fills history books, but the grinding, intimate kind that turns neighbors into enemies and reason into superstition. Goya watched it. He recorded it in etchings so brutal they were not published in his lifetime. He saw what human beings do to each other when fear and ideology and desperation strip away everything polished and ceremonial. Then illness took his hearing, completely, permanently. At the age of 46, the world went silent around him, and Goya was left inside himself in a way that most people never have to experience. The isolation deepened over decades. The inner life grew louder as the outer world grew quiet. By the time he moved into the house outside Madrid that would later be called the Quinta del Sordo, the deaf man's villa, he was in his 70s, and what he did inside that house was something that still does not have a clean explanation. He painted his walls, not for a patron, not for a gallery, not for the church or the crown or posterity. He painted directly onto the plaster of the rooms where he lived, where he ate, where he sat alone with his thoughts in a silence that had by then lasted decades. 14 works in total, dark, strange, psychologically violent in a way that his public paintings never quite allowed. They are now known as the Black Paintings, and Saturn was one of them. This is the detail that changes the entire painting, because this was not a commission. It was not a demonstration of skill or a retelling of myth for an educated audience who would appreciate the classical reference. This was something Goya placed on his own wall and then lived beside. Every morning, every evening, in the last years of his life, in a house he shared mostly with silence, this image was there, which raises a question that no art historian can fully answer. What was he trying to say to himself? The myth behind the image is ancient. Saturn, or Cronus as the Greeks knew him, was the ruler of the world before the age of gods. A prophecy told him that one of his children would one day rise up and take his power from him. And so he did the only thing that fear, in its most naked and irrational form, ever suggests. He tried to consume the threat before it could grow. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth, Saturn swallowed the child. He was not cruel in the way that villains are cruel. He was afraid. He was doing what the terrified do, eliminating the future because the future might contain his ending. It did not work, of course. Zeus was hidden, survived, returned, and did exactly what the prophecy promised. The thing Saturn feared became real precisely because of everything he did to prevent it. But Goya does something to this myth that no other painter had done quite so directly. He removes every trace of the divine. There is no throne, no sky, no classical composition, no indication that we are watching a god in a mythological event taking place somewhere outside of human experience. There is only darkness, and a naked, fragile, desperate body, and two hands that will not let go. Goya did not paint mythology dressed as horror. He painted fear dressed as mythology, and the figure he created is not a god. He is something far more familiar. Look at the hands. They are not the hands of a conqueror. They are large, yes, disproportionately large relative to the body they hold, but the grip is not strong in any confident sense. It is the grip of someone who is holding on rather than tearing apart. The knuckles are pale with pressure. The fingers are buried in flesh, not with the precision of violence, but with the blind, clenching force of something that cannot make itself release. These are the hands of a man who calls what he is doing protection, and that is the hidden truth inside this image. The thing that makes it so difficult to look at and so difficult to look away from. Saturn tried to protect his power by consuming what threatened it. He told himself perhaps that this was necessary, that the alternative was worse, that without this act, everything he had built would be taken from him. Every tyrant who has ever sacrificed a generation to preserve a system has made this same calculation. Every parent who has ever crushed a child in the name of love has reached for this same logic. Every institution that has ever destroyed the people it was built to serve has used this same language. We are doing this to protect something. But what Goya understood, and what this painting makes visible, is that the moment fear enters protection, the transformation has already begun. The protector and the devourer are not opposites. They are the same figure at different stages of the same collapse, and the body in Saturn's hands, limp, passive, already beyond resistance, is not just one child. It is every generation that inherited a world already eaten hollow by the one before it. Every young person handed a future that the previous age consumed in advance. Every new thing that arrived too late, that was swallowed before it could become a threat or a replacement or simply itself. There is a detail in Saturn's face that most people notice and then quickly move past because it is too uncomfortable to stay with for long. His mouth is open, his eyes are wide, and neither of these expressions reads as pleasure. The open mouth is not the open mouth of appetite. It is closer to the open mouth of someone screaming internally, someone in the middle of an act they cannot stop, producing a sound that has nowhere to go. And the eyes, enormous and fixed, are not looking at the body they are consuming. They are looking outward, past the body, past the canvas, into a space that does not exist inside the painting. Goya spent the last years of his life in silence. He had been inside his own head for decades by the time he painted this. He had watched his country consume itself, watched the Enlightenment ideals he once believed in collapse under the weight of war and superstition and human cruelty. He had outlived certainty. He had outlived faith in reason. He had outlived most of the people he had known, and he had painted this on his wall, not as a warning to anyone else, not as a public statement, as something more private than that, as the image that made sense of something he had witnessed so many times in so many different forms that it had become the deepest truth he knew. Fear does not remain an emotion, it becomes an action, and by the time it becomes an action, the thing that performs it is no longer recognizable as the thing that once loved what it is now destroying. That is the confession Goya placed on his wall, not in words. He had grown suspicious of words by then, suspicious of language and reason and all the polished systems humans use to explain away what they are doing. He placed it in pigment directly onto plaster in a room he would never leave, and he left Saturn there, staring outward, holding what he had already lost. Because this is what the painting finally becomes when you have stood with it long enough. Not a mythological scene, not a historical curiosity, not even a document of one old man's psychological collapse. It becomes a mirror. Saturn's eyes are not looking at his victim, they are looking at whoever is standing in front of the painting, and the question those eyes are asking is not one that mythology can answer. It is a question about recognition, about the specific quiet horror of seeing something in a painted face that you have also seen in a human one. A parent who held too tightly, a leader who decided the future needed to be controlled before it could be trusted, a system that promised to serve people and slowly learned to consume them instead, a generation that built something and then, when the time came to hand it over, found that it could not make itself let go. Saturn is not frightening because he is inhuman. He is frightening because he is not. Goya painted him on his wall, in the dark, in his final years, and he did not give him horns or scales or any of the visual vocabulary of monsters. He gave him wide human eyes and trembling human hands and the expression of something that knows, at the deepest level, that what it is doing is wrong, and is doing it anyway, because fear, once it reaches a certain depth, is stronger than love, stronger than reason, stronger than the memory of what you once meant to protect. That is the painting Goya left on his wall. That is the painting that has been staring back ever since, and if you look at it long enough, you begin to understand why he never tried to take it down.